All right, so it is 2 o'clock, and we don't typically do these in the middle of the day, but I felt it was necessary to veer from the norm. Thanks for tuning in, everybody who's available. My name is Marlon Walker. I am NABJ's Vice President of Print. I wanted to do something a little bit different because I think in the middle of everything that we're seeing with journalists losing jobs, the bright spot is that there are a lot of people who are actually still hiring. So this afternoon, I've assembled a group of folks who will talk to you a little bit about the jobs they have available and tips that you can use to get hired and start a job in the middle of all of what's going on. So with us this afternoon, and I'm gonna switch all this out so I can see everybody, we have James Hill, who is the Senior News Director for the Detroit Free Press, one of my former haunts.
Hey, hey.
We have Al Tompkins, who is Senior Faculty for the Poynter Institute. We have Chip Mahaney, who is the Emerging Talent Leader? Is that your exact title?
That is the title, yep.
With the EW Scripps Company. So guys, thank you. Thank you for being here this afternoon, and I hope that our membership takes a lot away from it. I want to start with a question, and then we'll start with Chip. Why are you and how are you able to hire right now?
Well, so at our company, so I work for Scripps, and we are now largely a broadcasting company. Of course, 142 years ago, we were born as a newspaper company and had newspapers up until not too long ago. But we're largely a broadcast company now that also has positions in podcasting, our Stitcher business, some other new media or digital media plays that we have. You know, I'll tell you a couple of things. We're hiring, but at a different pace, a different cadence. Some positions that we just have to have filled. I mean, it's very hard in a broadcast newsroom if you do not have a full complement of broadcast news producers. And so those positions are always in demand. Unlike people who want to be frontline reporters, MMJs, anchors, there's a lot of those people out there, and more people than jobs mostly. In producers, for producers, there's generally fewer people than jobs. And so we're always on the hunt anyway. And if you're down a producer or two in your newsroom really has an impact from it because people are doubling up on jobs. People are working 6th and 7th days, and that just really creates a bigger load. So positions like that we're hiring for because we have to. I would think in some cases where we have positions that are tied to sales, in some cases they're tied to leadership, then we are actively recruiting and hiring for those positions. A lot of our positions, though, however, are on a very much a slow roll. Our managers right now, just as everywhere, and you guys know, are highly tied up with staying safe and healthy and keeping their families safe and healthy and keeping their staff safe and healthy, and they're working from home. So some things that are not critical, or at least as critical as getting the product done every day and serving our communities, that goes by the wayside. But some positions we just need to have to keep the businesses running.
No, absolutely. And James, you're hiring for not only full-time, but freelance positions as well to cover the coronavirus communities up there.
Yes.
By the need.
I'm sorry?
It looks like you guys saw an immediate need and decided to just forge ahead.
Yeah, well, the fact is, you know, as Chip was saying, you know, the news is going to go on, and you have to have people out there on the front lines who are available to report it. In some cases, we've gone back and hired as freelancers some former Free Press reporters who have retired, took early retirements, buyouts, etc. But they have a wealth of knowledge about the city and about a lot of the people that we're writing about. Unfortunately, you know, the higher risk groups tend to be older people or people with other, you know, underlying health conditions, and a lot of those older folks are well-known people around the area. And so we rely upon that institutional knowledge that we still have available from Free Press freelancers who are still in the area, some who aren't even in Detroit anymore, but can still do the work remotely like the rest of us and like we're doing here. So we lean on them for their expertise because they just know a lot about these people and the context, which is important to bring to any story, is why these people are important. And so to be able to have the folks with that knowledge who can share it, then that's great. And at the same time, we're also, I just hired 3 interns who will be starting in June. We did try to bring in people who were already in the state of Michigan. However, we do have one candidate who's coming in from Stanford. But they have family here, so they already have a place to stay. That's a key thing because those folks will be doing a lot of the breaking news reporting, and a lot of the breaking news reporting still requires some feet on the street, as it were. So we want to have people who are available to do that.
Hey, James, it's Al Tompkins. Are you guys hiring any freelance work, particularly for photographers? And for the college students who are watching, and I suspect a lot of them are, is there anything they can do to be pitching organizations like yours for freelance work? And Chip, you too. They are producing a lot of student media, and some of it that I've had the chance to see is really, really good.
Yes, and we've picked up freelance, not just reporting, but visuals, video, photographs. We have students. It helps the fact that with Gannett's merger with Gatehouse, now we have more properties in the state of Michigan, and so we're able to kind of lean on each other. But also, we've also used stories and images that we've gotten from places like U of M, Michigan State. We have some freelancers from Wayne State University. Having those people who are physically on those campuses and in those areas where we can really use some more eyes and ears to see what's going on has been very helpful. I mean,
how would they pitch you, James, if they had something?
They pitch it to us directly. They pitch it. I get emails directly. I've gotten a couple emails that I've actually hired some people to do some freelance stories for, and they were basically cold calls. People who are in the area. One person who's, from New York, works with the Times, but is in Grand Rapids and visiting family and is kind of stuck here now. So they're looking for something to do. And so, I commissioned a freelance piece from them. I've gotten pitches from some students at Michigan State who have they just reach out to me. And that's been a part of, as senior news director, I wear a lot of hats, and one of them is our intern coordinator. So I have a lot of relationships with the colleges and universities in the state already. And so those relationships are really bearing fruit because a lot of the people that I've met on campus trips or who have come to visit our newsroom over the years, are now reaching out to me and saying, hey, I've got an idea for this, or I've got this great photo from this, can you use it?
So we've got a handful of questions already. I did want to ask, because James, one thing that you mentioned in the freelancer job description was that they didn't have to necessarily be in Detroit.
Right.
How often is that going to be happening right now as we, sit in shelter-in-place orders and situations where people are probably afraid to move?
Yeah, well, we're all working remotely right now. So the fact is, most of the things that we're covering, be that City Hall, be that press conferences from the healthcare systems, the governor's daily press conferences and the like, they're all live streamed. So you have the ability to watch it, from the live stream and report directly from there in many of those cases. And that's what we're doing in a lot of those cases. Sometimes, depending on the story, or if there may be, beyond the daily, maybe there's an enterprise piece that we're working on that deals with a particular angle, and we'll want to be there to ask some follow-up questions. We'll do that when we feel it's necessary and when people feel comfortable and if they feel safe in doing it. We still have people who are out in the neighborhoods and finding, we're trying to strike a balance between just what's happening in the daily news and the numbers that are coming out, but also looking for, being able to tell the stories of the people who died. We've made a commitment at the Free Press to be able to write as many obituaries on people as we can, even if they're short. Every Sunday, we do a special section that's dedicated just to COVID-19. And in that special section, we always have a group of obits of people who have died, people we've been able to reach out to and who have come back to us. And these aren't always, celebrity or high profile people. They may just be regular folks, but those people are important. And it's important to be able to tell their stories. And you can do that remotely. So those are just some of the things that you can do. When we come, I spoke earlier about bringing in some new interns. Those interns will be coming in and we'll be onboarding them much like we would during normal times. We have, everyone gets laptops, so people work remotely anyway. The only thing to be different is, typically we would have a desk set up for them with a dock, monitor, a dedicated phone line and that type of thing. Since people won't necessarily be in the office, we can still meet them down at our main office, give them their equipment, and then they're off and running from there. The only thing we ask is, it's the key is being able to stay in contact, in communication, and particularly when you're new to an area or just new to the staff. People need to be able to reach you, to be able to kind of talk to you. You might have questions about whether that's a technological question or you're looking for contacts. So, you'll be able to reach out, and we won't be able to do that as much face to face. So there may be a bit of a steeper learning curve coming in. And it's like, but the fact is that everyone's on mission and everyone's ready and everyone's being cooperative. So we're sharing contacts, we're sharing whatever information that we have. We have, meetings 3-4 times a day over Zoom or over our Microsoft Teams channel at the Free Press. And we discuss what's going on. We have a running list of who's doing what. We've assigned specific people to follow specific angles of the story. So those, when we know if we get an email or a tip or a phone call or something from someone about a particular area, we can direct that to a specific person so that someone gets back to them and we're able to capture the stories and be able to tell some good human stories. Because like I said, it's not all bad news. There are a lot of people who are recovering. We want to be able to tell their stories. There's still some wonderful things, tales of neighbors helping neighbors out in the area that we want to be able to tell, and we want to be able to have to hit the streets to be able to do that. Our photojournalists are heroes of the highest order because they are constantly on the street, and that's for, whether it's for our online, whether that's for print, and just like with television, those folks can't work remotely for the most part. They have to be out. They have to be talking to people. And so those people are really the real heroes here.
Absolutely. Let's get through a few of these questions. I know there's a presentation that's been put together as well. Let's see, we'll skip through that one because Scripps definitely is hiring. That's why Chip is here. What would you say to aspiring journalists in a niche field, sports, entertainment, in regards to a job search? Al, you want to take that one?
Well, the first thing is to realize that sports is under a tremendous amount of pressure right now because so many sports are just not happening. So nobody's going to be hiring for sports at the minute. And the people who are in sports are really not doing sports very much. I mean, at least not the way you think of it. So what I would say to you is when you pitch yourself, if your dream job is a sports job, remember, versatility is the name of the game right now. So what these guys want to hear from you is, I can do anything on any platform. Just tell me where you want it and what you want, and I can do it. What they want right now is versatility. And at some point, you may be able to work back into that dream job of whatever beat it is you've got. But now's not the time to be narrow casting, and now's not the time to be saying, I am a sports person, period. You are everything. And that's the way you got to cast it. I mean, Chip's the one out there recruiting, and he'll tell you what he would say to somebody who wants to have a sports job.
Well, in sports, I started my career in sports and had a couple of great local news sports positions before I was 30. And I worked on a team of 4 and a team of 6. And both those teams in the stations I worked at, medium-sized market stations, are now down to teams of 2. So it's just, sports in itself, in part because of local television and the way that the hardcore sports viewers consume sports. It's not waiting for the 11 o'clock sports highlights. Everyone's completely wired to their league apps or to ESPN or whatever their favorite sources are for the coverage they want of their specific team with their specific players. And they're not really relying on, Channel 5 in your market to do that for them. So we, in a sense, because our sports, I think in general, local broadcasting has not evolved like it should have already made it tough for people to get sports jobs in local media. And that said, there's still room for people with great kind of interest and curiosity in telling great stories of the community. And right now they won't be in games being played, but there's still great stories about athletes and or teams who can't function right now, don't have anywhere to go. But there's still great stories you can tell. And as Al and others have said here, what can you do while we're not playing sports? And where can you use your raw skills? If you're a good shooter, you're a great shooter no matter what it is you're covering. If you can write beautifully, then that writing will carry you over to covering some other beat that may not be anything sports related. So use what you have, get in where you can. And we hope one day that 2 things will happen in our business. One is we'll be playing sports again pretty soon. And 2, that the innovative groups among us will figure out a way for sports to become far more relevant again on local television like it was when I was coming up in this business 2 decades ago.
I can tell you, Marlon, I do a fair amount of teaching for ESPN, and one of the things that they have had me focusing on the last few years is a lot more things like investigative work and data work. So sports isn't just about being on the sidelines. It's about enterprising. It's big dollars. It's huge dollars. It's big business. And with that comes all sorts of investigative opportunities. So investigative reporters also find a lot of opportunity inside sports.
No, definitely. Let me say this, because I'm noticing a lot of the questions are asking whether people are still hiring. James is here and Chip is here because they are hiring right now. So I think that answers about 10 of the 24 questions that we've already had coming in.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to put the website in the chat over there for people who are looking. If you just go to gannett.com/careers, and you can filter by state, you can filter by job, whatever it is that you're looking for, and you will see every open position that we have on there. And I'll make sure to put that in the chat, as well as my personal contact information too.
Marlon, I can also tell you there are lots of other groups that are still hiring. Some of the more interesting ones, particularly if you're bilingual or multilingual, some of the most interesting jobs are at Voice of America and also Radio Free Europe. And both of them obviously are government jobs, so they don't have the same commercial pressures that others do. But and I teach at both of those places, and I can tell you that it's real journalism. So they're both actively looking right now. In fact, they're sort of accelerating because viewership and readership is so high. Also, 24-hour cable operations are also really aggressively going after jobs now. Why? Their value model isn't in advertising in the same way that it is for over-the-air broadcasters. Their value really is in trying to lure people into becoming cable subscribers. So it's a very different business model for them. And for that reason, they're not affected the same way, and they're actively hiring. So for example, Spectrum, which is all over the place. They're in Milwaukee and North Carolina and here in Florida and all over the place.
Los Angeles.
They're hiring all over the place for all kinds of jobs, reporters, producers, MMJs, all sorts of things.
No, thank you for that. Let me see what's the next. Do you need people? Do you need people? Are you still hiring? I'm a former reporter and left the newsroom in December after being recruited by the local Convention and Visitors Bureau. It's a little more than 2 months on the job. I've been furloughed until a decision is made about my position in late June. I'm considering applying for jobs. How do I reflect the furlough on a resume? I'm considering going back to news. Well, I think everybody and I know I want to give you guys a chance to answer too, but I think nobody is looking at this situation as anything other than the unprecedented situation that it is. And so if you've been furloughed because of cutbacks that were due to the coronavirus, or for whatever reason, cutbacks are taking place right now, I don't think anybody's going to look at it and say, well, or hold it against you. Chip?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, I think, in fact, the way that the person wrote their paragraph that you read was perfect, because we all get it. I mean, it's not a measure of your job performance after 2 months on the job at the Convention Business Bureau that you're being let go. Assuming that you did a good job in your career as a journalist, you've got good references at your current job, if you can give those out, or at your previous jobs, everyone gets it. I mean, there's so many furloughs going on in all kinds of businesses right now. That's why the government's handing out, $1,000, $2,000 stimulus checks to people who are out of work or don't have enough work. And so it's not a problem with that. I think as long as you're clear with people about your situation, then the fact is that you're on furlough right now is not a strike against you. In fact, it's just an honest admission of where we are right
now. In fact, I'm talking to you on furlough right now. So
thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
By the way, Marlon, one of our participants here is from Sinclair, one of the 3 or 4 largest broadcast companies. Who said they're actively hiring all over the country. So you can go on their website as well. And the beauty of the big companies right now is that they're so big that even if you can't go where you want to go right now, they all have very active networks internally moving you up and up and up through the system in different locations. So eventually you can get closer to where you want to be physically.
Right. No, and thank you, Kevin, for being here. I asked him to pop in this afternoon. We talked this morning, and a little bit of my background for getting prepared for today was in talking to him and talking to you all over the last few days, because I know it's not fluid, and I know everybody's got different things that they're doing. With Sinclair, there may not be an opportunity to begin because of everything that's going on, but there are also opportunities for getting hired immediately. That's what I'm hearing from different companies, that in some cases it's getting you in the door and getting everything done up to the point of you beginning the job. So
Hey, Marlon, I just wanted to address one. I saw a question earlier when someone asked about mid-career journalists, people who aren't necessarily college students who are looking for work. And I mean, those positions are out there. I mean, when you look at the City Hall position that we have open right now, that's probably you're going to be looking more so to mid-career journalists, people who have some experience covering politics, covering municipal governments and that type of thing. So, I mean, those positions are there too. But also, again, as Al and Chip and Marlon have been saying, be open to the possibility of, starting out. Can I do a couple freelance pieces for you, to kind of get your name out there, get some familiarity in the newsroom. The best way to get your foot in the door is to know someone or have someone who knows you and is familiar with your work. And so there's no better way to do that than to freelance a few pieces so people kind of see what you can do and what your capabilities are. And then you can kind of talk your way into, okay, well, how might we make this permanent? So, I mean, just be open to those possibilities, whether you're a college student, whether you're intern, or whether you're mid-career and looking to make a change, or you're just looking, to make a few dollars right now while you're on furlough, whatever it is. It's like, be open to those possibilities.
Chip, would Scripps stations be interested in buying freelance work or taking freelance contributions?
I think it'd be on a market by market basis. And so when I was listening to, obviously, what James was talking about in Detroit, I mean, the newspaper business for a long time has been much more wired to freelancers than local television has been, in part because, generally speaking, with old school television, you need to have gear to do the work of a television journalist. And now your iPhone can serve as pretty much the gear you need to record video, and you have every other tool that a newspaper person would need, which is your eyes and your ears and your pen and paper, or a smartphone or a laptop to report what you what you see. So, but it's just not kind of part of the DNA of local broadcast newsrooms. However, I would think one of our smart news directors, if they saw something out there, would take a look at it and see if it might be something that would be useful to run on air or on one of our digital platforms. So I would hope that if there are freelancers in a market, that if they had something to offer to a Scripps news director, that news director would at least reply to them and thank them and maybe talk about a submission or something else like that. I mean, we're hiring where we need to hire. And the rest of it becomes, well, if it's a great piece of content, I'm sure our people would love to see it, and then decide whether it's something we could actually use. It's just a different, freelancers and television's not, outside of New York, LA, Chicago, is not really kind of an active part of the local broadcast model in most markets. So just not a lot of TV freelancers hanging around.
We've got a question about whether or what happens if your demo reel is an audio reel. What can you do to improve right now and look forward to some of these jobs that are being open as well?
Well, I'll pitch in first. Let's don't forget, NPR is hiring. So don't forget radio people or newspaper people who are doing blogs or podcasts. Public radio is having an unprecedented year of listenership right now. They're really, really vital, and don't look past.
Their business model is very different too.
Yeah, and also, I mean, in our newsroom, we just hired another audio person. So these are folks who have experience in radio, TV, and just in podcasts in general. So, I mean, we operate on several different platforms. I mean, we go from the print newspaper to the digital, online. If you holler, "Hey, Alexa," in the morning, give me my news from Detroit, chances are you're going to get dispatches read by our reporters on air, on audio speakers. So, I mean, those opportunities are everywhere, and maybe some places you don't expect. I mean, a lot of times folks don't expect to go to a legacy newspaper, so quote unquote, and to have those opportunities. But I mean, we do it all. We do video. I mean, we've got 3-4 national Emmys for documentaries and things that we've done too. So, I mean, we're on every platform. So don't rule out, oh, this is a TV station, so they probably won't be interested in me, or this is a radio station, or this is a newspaper kind of thing. It's like, fact is, we all overlap so much with the skills that you need. If you've got digital skills, whether that's, web producing, whether that's social media, which is a big thing for any newsroom, whether that's broadcast, print, or what have you. I mean, if you have audio skills, if you've got visual skills, if you can edit audio, you can edit video, all of those things come into play in any medium that's out there.
So there's a question on the floor that says, if you've been laid off or furloughed for longer than the week and you had a big project that you were working on, should you or could you pitch that to another organization?
Furloughed or laid off?
Livity. Sure. It's part of that is negotiation. Sometimes you'll pitch things to a particular news organization, and they might ask for exclusivity over that, or they might ask for okay, we'll take it and we'll pay you for this, and give us a month or whatever, and then you can try to sell it to someone else. But it kind of goes newsroom to newsroom from what I've seen.
My first question would be what kind of contract might play into this. A second would be whether or not you have assets that belong to the company that you worked for. So if, for example, you had video or audio or other things that you collected in the process of doing that work, is your former employer going to lay claim to that property? Or as part of your separation, can you make an agreement that the stuff you collected and the knowledge you gained is yours to walk with? Another way of doing it is to say, look, while I know that you're cutting because of expenses, but you've already paid for this amount of work, why don't we finish this up and just keep me on as a freelancer to finish this project for a set amount of money or something? I mean, there are at least 3 different ways of doing this, right? One of them is for them to say, no, we own it, you can't touch it, we'll sue you. One is for them to say, go with God, take your material, hope you can report it. And the other is to say, why don't I finish it for you and you pay me?
Yeah, but always good to get that up front, advance and clear, because there's a lot of, you don't want to be on the back end of those fights.
Definitely. You definitely don't want to be on the back end of those. And two, especially when you're talking about visuals.
Absolutely. There's another question that asks if, would it be appropriate to submit a reel with all coronavirus related materials?
Depends on how good it is. I mean, if you've got material nobody else has, it's going to make everybody's eyes pop, then absolutely. But also make sure that the work shows a variety of different kinds of reporting. I mean, Chip and James aren't going to want to see the same person sitting in the news conference every week, because everybody can sit in a news conference or monitor a news conference. But can you enterprise stories that are hard news and less deadline driven news and feature stories and all kinds of things? I mean, the content, the topics don't matter as much as your ability to exploit them into really great stories.
Agreed.
And if you're a broadcast video reporter or video reporter of any sort, having a YouTube channel on which you can upload your stories, the regular ones that you cover when there's not a crisis like this, and the ones you're doing right now, they're great just to kind of showcase all your work. Your reel may be that 8 to 10 minute kind of showcasing of what you think your best work is right now. But if you've got on YouTube or elsewhere links to your other work, it's just great to have that. Well, I do that now, and I've done this before, and it all goes to the body of work I want to present you as a candidate.
You know, if you do amazing work with a cell phone and you don't ever get to leave the house and nobody will talk to you in person, just imagine as a hiring agent, imagine how your mind is going to wander. Golly, what's going to happen when I turn them loose on the world? I mean, they're going to be amazing, right? So, I mean, if you can do the best work in the worst circumstances, it's an easy choice.
Absolutely. Next question. Considering the situation that we're in, how would it look if somebody were to switch back and forth between different fields and not just stay in journalism? If somebody left journalism and say went to tech and wanted to come back?
It happens.
It does.
Long careers, it happens. You know, just have a good story, have a good reason for making the choices you want to make. Sometimes that choice is, you know what, it sounded fun to go do. And I had the opportunity to go do it, to try it. And whether it worked or not, that can be its own story. But
and it could have made you a lot smarter too, right? I had a friend of mine went to the insurance business, health insurance business, came back and was a terrific health reporter and a business reporter when he came back.
Yeah.
Yes, and specifically if you're talking about journalism and tech, I mean, there's a lot of overlap with that right now. When you're, like I said, when you're looking at data visualization, people who can do complicated graphics, interactives, you know, whether that's website and that's coding, building platforms on a website, you know, creating them out of whole cloth, or even when you're talking about, you know, just the visual aspects of television and journalism and being able to, you know, do graphics for TV and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of overlap between journalism and tech, but it's definitely not a strike against you to go out and do something else and bring that experience back to the newsroom, because it helps round you out as a reporter. All those various experiences.
Think about it, Marlon. You're covering education. How valuable would it be for you to have had some teaching in your resume? I mean, it would have really made you a lot more aware than you would have been if you had never had that kind of experience.
Absolutely. Look, some of my best friends have become teachers in the last few years. I found that out very quickly.
Hey, I used to sell cars. Helps me sell stories now.
Exactly. No, it's a great skill. I mean, you think about the raw skills that you get from doing other jobs. First of all, if you were to go into tech and maybe work for one of the brand names, work for an Amazon, work for Facebook, work for a Google, I would just ask you questions along. What was it like to work there, right? And if you had a great experience there, maybe you were there a couple of years, that's a mark into itself. Like, you got hired by those people, right? So tell me how you got hired. You were a journalist maybe and you got hired by Google. Smart people get hired by Google. That tells me something about your ability to go somewhere else. Or maybe you went to go do a startup. I love hearing startup experience. Most of them fail, by the way. So it's okay if you come back and say that didn't work, because most of them don't work. But they're just great lessons learned from people that, me having had kind of a job all my life, and just curious about why people make those decisions and what they learn from those decisions. And sometimes that knowledge can be hugely beneficial to a newsroom or a newsroom culture.
Absolutely. We have a question about salary. Will salaries be affected in all of this? Are people going to pay people less?
I wish I had the magic answer for that, but I mean, so much of this is really going to depend on, how advertisers come back and what goes on. What are some of the permanent changes that we'll see, in the marketplace after all this? I mean, there's going to be some permanent changes. We just don't know what they are yet. After 9/11, look at the experience of just going to the airport and how that changed, and the TSA sprouted up out of that. So, I mean, a lot of it is going to depend on, just what the marketplace is like once we come through the other side of this. I mean, we're a guild newsroom, so we're a union newsroom. And by contract, that we have, pay scales for people doing certain jobs. And those things are not likely to change. But, you may end up in situations like where we are now, where, we're taking furloughs. Some senior executive level folks are taking some pay cuts, but those things are supposedly temporary, until we kind of get back into the swing of things. But, it's kind of hard to really say for sure how that's going to permanently dictate the salaries.
Marlon, my guess is that most people's salaries probably won't change much here. It's upper end salaries that will. So if you were, for example, a very highly paid anchor, for example, or even a highly paid corporate officer, that's going to be affected more. But nipping and tucking a few $1,000s from some reporter who's not making anything anyway, that really doesn't do very much. It just it guarantees you're not going to be able to recruit or maintain anybody. Those are the kinds of nickels and dimes that just in the end really don't make that much difference. Overtime certainly will. Extraordinary expenditures of various sorts certainly will. Those kinds of things you can find other ways around. But the nickels and dimes of tucking somebody's already pretty low salary isn't likely to be one of the big strategies that companies are going to use. They're going to look for bigger dollar savings and not the little dollar savings. The one thing that will happen though, Marlon, is this, and that is, and these guys both know this because like me, they've done it as managers, and that is they'll just delay hiring. So one of the things you can do to save significant dollars is, let's say, for example, you have a job that's open, but you could do without that person for a month or 2 months. Saving that money and the 40% or so of the associated benefits that go with it saves significant dollars. And even though you may have to pay some overtime to backfill that, it's still a big savings. So I won't be surprised if a lot of jobs stay open for a while, maybe even a quarter, while we try to make up some of this deficit, and then they'll hire at virtually the same rate they had before. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I think every company, I would imagine, has done lots of models. If we're kind of at home till May 1st, and then we get 50% of our business in the next quarter back, there's a model for that, right? What does that look like in terms of the money we have to spend? If we're out till June 1st, but only 25% of the business comes back in the next quarter, what does that look like for our immediate outcome? There's still so much we don't know in terms of what the economic impact is for our communities, and then how it affects our revenue, as to exactly things that Al talked about, mostly around the pace of hiring or any other associated negative impacts of that, including furloughs or layoffs that still could be to come. So there's just so much we don't know right now, because there's so much we don't know right now about how long this virus is going to be with us, or how long we can contain it. When can we go back to work? When can our restaurants reopen? When can we not have 6 feet of social distance? When can we spend money? When can we travel? All those have to come around first before even our planners can really get a good handle on what the advertising market might look like on the backside.
We've got a question wondering about how to showcase your versatility as a reporter right now. What type of things can you do in this abbreviated fashion that we're working out of right now?
I think Al said it well towards the beginning of this webinar. It's just show your versatility. I mean, show your willingness to be able to jump in and do whatever's asked of you. that's really the best way to kind of showcase what you can do right now, because that's where you'll get the opportunities. Everybody's going to have a need somewhere along the line here. And if you've got a good story, you know, particularly if it's something that's not off of a press conference, but it's a good story that's in your community about somebody who's doing something good, or who, you know, who's helping other people, or, you know, who was on death's bed and all of a sudden they've come through this, and how they did it and how they got through it, and the psychological, you know, parts of it as well. I mean, being able to jump on those stories and do those things and show things that other people, you know, the rest of the world's not seeing, that kind of distinguish yourself. Those are all key things to be able to do.
You know, there's a time in which in a job search, you want to be the very, very best person at a very specific skill. So if you're an award-winning, you know, investigative reporter in the job, you know, and when we need niche positions filled, then being the very best at a very specific thing is a good thing to be. But as has been talked about just now and elsewhere in the conversation, you know, there's going to be a need also. Like, I got one position, but I really need 3 things done. And if you're a veteran and you've got a resume that shows that you've done different things, that might be an asset to somebody. Don't assume that because you're a generalist journalist, right, that is not a good thing. Sometimes that versatility, like, yeah, I did well for entertainment for a couple of years, and I did sports, and, you know, I've got this breaking news that I did for 2 or 3 years, and, you know, I'm plug and play. Tell me what you need done, and I'll go get it done for you. And that might come into, that's a good selling point, I think, for some positions that are open right now. You know, be careful when you read the job descriptions what they're looking for, but don't assume that a breadth of experience is a negative thing, when sometimes you might feel like if you're a generalist, you're going up against very highly specific, skilled people for jobs that are open other times in our market history.
I can tell you this, Marlon. I mean, I've known Chip for probably 30 or 40 years, and he's an old broadcast guy. And about 15, 20 years ago, he made this huge jump towards social media and became one of the most vocal proponents of people becoming really active and smart about posting into social media and so on. And so when you look at people like James and Chip and you, what you're seeing are people who can evolve their skills, their journalism. They can find ways to become whatever it is you need next. In my case, I ended up going back to grad school to become much more knowledgeable about interactive design. I mean, I know broadcasting, I know reporting, but I needed to know that. So you go back and you just retool. And you really have to do that. And I mean, look at these guys. I mean, they're at the top of their game, but it's not because they sit at the top of their game. They're constantly evolving their skills.
Yeah,
Wayne
we've definitely had to learn some new tricks over the years, because, you know, I started in the mid '80s, so it was all print, and that's what I knew. But as times have evolved, you know, I've learned social media. I've learned, you know, excuse me. I've learned how to post stories. I've learned how to, you know, manipulate the web page and take photos and do videos and edit videos and all those other types of things. It's a constant learning process. Journalists have always been like constant learners anyway, but it tended to be more topical. Now it's more platform. Not only are we learning things that are topical and new things every day, but we're also learning more platform things and things that we never thought we would be doing, you know, that we're learning how to do, because that's really what makes you an asset in the newsroom.
Absolutely.
I think one of the great things about being a journalist is the love of learning. So what Al talked about in the fundamental shift in kind of like what you do to build up your skill set. But at the same time, if you go to work every day and like, I don't know what I'm going to get to do today, but I'm going to learn something fun. I'm expecting to learn something that will challenge me or will excite me, so I can either tell a story about it, or so I can build up a skill that I can then use it to make our newsroom better or our industry better. Then that's a great place to be as a journalist, period, is if you just have this kind of daily hunger and lust for learning something new.
Whose market is it these days? It feels like because everything shut down, this is the opportunity for a journalist with a little more experience than, say, somebody who's just getting out of school to actually have a better shot at one of these jobs. I know NABJ, for the most part, we've got a huge influx of younger journalists who come to the job fair and who participate in these things more often. But is this an opportunity for mid-career journalists who are looking for an opportunity to get into a different market, or somebody who's just looking for a change of pace?
I think it's hard for anybody who isn't really thinking through or getting good advice on their kind of job searching strategy. I've seen very talented or skilled or experienced mid-career journalists just don't present themselves well. And I've seen, of course, a lot of college students I work with today haven't figured out how to do that either. So if I can just give you a couple of bits of advice, I mean, the first thing you can do today is to go scour LinkedIn and learn the best practices for building up your own profile, right? That's the first place you start on LinkedIn, is building out your story on your LinkedIn. It's not just a job duty, like a one-page resume you might submit to a career site. Your LinkedIn profile has all kinds of space for you to tell your story in the way you can best showcase it. And then you start using LinkedIn right now. In fact, I heard a number today that LinkedIn searches and LinkedIn traffic is way up right now because people are at home and doing and they're also kind of in this job threatened world, if they're not job lost world, where they're thinking about what's next. And so be out there on LinkedIn, be active, use your time right now to go find people who are doing what you want to do on LinkedIn, and then make connections with them. LinkedIn's a pretty cool place for reaching out to somebody who you don't know. Maybe they're 3 levels above what you want to do, but most people on LinkedIn will take your connection. They might even answer your question. It's not socially creepy to stalk someone on LinkedIn like it might be on Facebook or some other place. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is verbose. LinkedIn gives you tons of space to talk about every job you've had. Write a story about the job that you had. Don't just kind of give me bullets about, yeah, I was assigned to do this, this, and this. No, tell me a story. If you can tell your own story really well and LinkedIn gives you all the space you want to do that, then I have a better shot of you understanding that you might be able to tell somebody else's story.
I have 25 plus years of editorial leadership experience in local news, cable news, and public media. I've been searching for my next opportunity for nearly a year. Any insights into how I might be able to engage further with recruiters and hiring managers about the skills and experience I bring to the table?
Starts with, what do you uniquely know that I need for you to do? I mean, when James and Chip are looking for people, Marlon, what they want to know is, what can you do for me that I can't get somebody else to do? And so when you think about what makes you unique, the first question in their mind, whether they will say it out loud or not, is, what problems can you solve for me that I need solved right now? Just having experience isn't enough. They're not going to be impressed that you've got 25 years of experience. They're going to want to know, what'd you do with that experience? And what can you do for me with that experience? So you're going to have to be really specific. If the first words out of your mouth is, I have 25 years of experience, that doesn't tell me as much as I built a newsroom from the ground up. Or, I managed my way through the 2008 recession and we still built ratings. Or I launched a social media connection platform that became the overwhelming dominant traffic driver in our market or something. I mean,
I won this.
Want to know specifics. Sorry, Chip, go ahead.
I said I won something, right? I mean, we either won a competition in the market, or I've won 20, this award or that award. Right? I mean, those kind of things can be very useful in helping me understand that whether you'll fight, whether you'll compete, whether you really go out there and hunger to be the best. I kind of boil that down to what Al said, which is great, into 2 words. I look at it, if I don't know the person, and if I'm not even sure what I would, if I'm just giving general advice, is, are they interesting at some level, and are they excellent at some level? And I look at, maybe you were a state champion Tiddlywinks player at some point. I don't even know what that game is anymore, but let's say you were just great at something, right? Even if it's not related to this, I'd still probably ask you, well, how'd you get to be so good at playing the cello or lawn bowling? You tell me. I mean, I'm really kind of curious of what it took for you to get there, and then having something interesting in your background. I'd always ask questions around that. If you can sell your own story to me, at least I'll probably get to the next level as well, whether I think you could actually start telling other people's stories really well.
Yep, and I agree with all of that, because I know that when I'm conducting interviews, beyond the basic questions that I ask people about their experience and what they've done, various beats that they've had, I always ask, what do you do when you're not writing? I want to know about that person too, because not only are we looking at particular skills, but we're looking at different types of experiences people have to bring into the room. Because when you're talking about stories, you want to have different perspectives. And so you want to know that you're hiring someone who is open-minded, or someone who is not afraid to take a chance every now and again, someone who brings that experience or that life experience into the newsroom that can help shape your coverage, because that's just as important as the beats that you've had too. It's like, I want to know about you as a person. And, like what Chip was saying, can you tell me your story? Can you spin a good story for me? Because that's going to help me determine if you're going to be able to tell that to other people. And with the information that you're gathering, and is it just going to be surface level things, or how much detail and context can you bring to a story? Some of that, I get more information from people telling me about themselves than I do from just their resume and what beats they've covered.
Marlon, because this is an NABJ sponsored conversation, I want to be overt about something. Make sure that you are telling people, if you are a race or ethnic minority, make sure I know that. This is a time when newsrooms are really pressing for minority candidates and for candidates of color. And look, there are lots of pressures and disadvantages that minorities have in America, but getting a job in broadcasting or in print shouldn't be one of them. If you are a minority candidate, particularly if you're active in NABJ, make sure I know that as a recruiter.
Yeah, and don't, I know that there are some people out there who will think it's like, oh, well, minority doesn't, a person of color doesn't equivalent to a person of quality. And that's just not true. The fact is, there's a lot of quality people out there, black, white, whatever it is. And it's like, so don't think that just because someone is looking for a person of color that they're looking for someone who maybe has a little less experience or something like that. Because I've heard a lot of that, and psychologically it can kind of play with your mind a little bit. But in essence, we're looking for the best people for the job. And it's like, and if you're a person of color, that's great.
Can I wrap up one thing that to the question that was originally asked earlier, and that's about the guy who had been out for a year. I'd also ask is, what feedback have you gotten from those who have responded to you? And have you applied that feedback, and then follow back up with the person who gave you that feedback and said, hey, I've made these changes. Does that improve, my case made to you, or do you think it improves my case made to other potential employers? Make sure that you're actively seeking feedback. And when you get it, put it to work and try it out and see if it works, and talk to other people too. Maybe the feedback I give you doesn't help you, but the feedback that one of these three guys gives you does help you. It's still personal and subjective, but if you're not asking for it, then you don't know if you're just kind of swinging at air.
Marlon, one other thing that I wonder, particularly if you three would talk about, and that is how important right now it is for you as an applicant to be interviewing the people who are interviewing you. You need to know as much as you can know about them, because times like these are going to reveal the best and worst in your next employer. So I wonder if the three of you would pass along advice for what questions an applicant should be asking of the potential employer.
I'll be honest. I work at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution right now, and I've been here 5 years as of last month. The one thing that I never thought to ask until I got here was about the history of layoffs, the history of how the newsroom had fared or suffered over, a 3 to 5 year period before you sat down for that interview. James knows I used to work at the Detroit Free Press. I actually left the Free Press to come here. I didn't leave for fear that I was going to lose my job. it was such a great newsroom and a great experience that it just, you know, the natural progression, I got a call and the opportunity was there. And that's something that I've really found over the last few years. And this is coming from somebody who's been, you know, laid off twice in a 15-year career. But that one, just to know what it's been like previously. We haven't laid off a reporter here the entire time I've been here. And in the few years before I got here, it was the same thing. And it's great to know that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I had a question. It might be in kind of in that same vein. I always like to question kind of what the culture is like in a particular newsroom, because that can play into, you know, how they handle adverse situations as well as how they handle the good times. I mean, is the culture here one where success is shared throughout the newsroom, and likewise, you know, the pain is shared throughout the newsroom? Those are types of things that I like to know in terms of where you're going into someplace, because that can, you know, one thing you really can't buy is peace of mind. And you want to have as much of a peace of mind as you can possibly have when you're going into a newsroom, to where you feel good about it. You know, people talk about that kind of that gut instinct, that reporter instinct that you have. And it's like, use that when you're going into places like that, and ask those questions, you know, and see if you can get honest answers out of folks. I mean, most people are happy to tell you, you know, particularly if somebody's taking you to lunch or someone's taking you for coffee outside of the newsroom and you don't feel like you have 1,000 eyes and ears on you, you know, just ask those questions. And, you know, as to Marlon's, or, you know, how do you deal with the tough times when cuts have to come? Is it something where it's just like, oh, first in, last, or, you know, last in, first out? Or is there kind of a measured approach to this? What types of considerations go into it? But that all plays into the culture.
Chip, it's a heck of a lot easier to work for the #1 station in town in times like this than it is to work for the #4 station, isn't it?
I suppose. I mean, it depends on kind of who you are. You know, #1 is good for a reason. It often denotes legacy and some pride of work that's been done there over generations. I also have enjoyed working at insurgent stations. It might be easier when the revenue is more stable, but no one knows how this is going to work out. I will also tell you that, again, just to build on everything that's been said and the answers that have been shared so far in this question, is, you know, I work for a company that's 142 years old, and we're going to be another 142 years old. So ask about the company. In broadcasting, as so much convergence has taken place and these large companies have gotten bigger, the companies start to have a pretty good reputation amongst themselves. And I'm very proud of where we stand and what we do for journalism. And very comfortable with aligning my values with the business values that are exhibited every day by our CEO and by the people who lead our broadcast division and other divisions. I know those people personally. I know them very well. And everything that they've ever done that I've seen is something I would say, yeah, that's a Scripps thing to do. You should ask the questions of the people who you'll be working with. You know, what kind of manager are you to be like? How will I know if I'm succeeding in your newsroom? What kind of feedback do you typically give people week by week? And how can I do a better job of getting on your calendar so that I can get feedback when you have time to give it to me, right? Rather than just simply, hey, great story, which doesn't mean much, or hey, come on my office. I haven't talked to you in a month, but you really screwed that one up today. Let's have a 30-minute conversation around just this one screw up and forget the fact that you've done 20 great stories before this one. So how do you figure out what's the feedback cycle like at the newsroom? You can ask the hiring manager or ask the other people that you're working with, that you would be working with, as to, you know, what's the best way of getting the feedback that you're looking for.
So I am getting the wrap up button, and we've got about 2 minutes left. So I want to stop and say thank you to you all for taking the opportunity for the last hour to help people out and share your tips on how to get these jobs and what jobs are available. I'm going to continue this on social media, Twitter and Facebook. I'm going to start a thread with the links to Scripps and Sinclair and the Free Press and Gannett, obviously, and some of the other companies that we know of. I'm going to reach out to you personally, Al. I'm going to start with you all. Al, if there's somebody who wants to reach out to you who maybe didn't get their question answered this afternoon, what's a good way to catch you? Is it social media? And give your social media handle too.
Oh yeah, it's easily. It's just Tompkins, Tompkins at Pointer, POYNTER.org, or you can just go to the Pointer website. It's all there. And you can also check out my email every morning, 6 a.m. in your inbox. It's a story idea service, and completely free, and you'll get half a dozen or more story ideas every single day.
4 years I've been signed up.
By the way, I want to say one quick thing, and that is I can only imagine that a lot of these people on this are on this because they need a job, they want a job, they're discouraged, they're worried. And it's my experience that the best people find work. If you're great, do not be discouraged, even in bad times. Opportunity awaits in confusion, and you will find this. You will find a way, whether it's in journalism or doing some other wonderful thing with your life that you use your journalistic skills for. There's a lot of good ways to use your talent. You're going to find that. It may take a lot of work, but you will.
Hey, Al, you're getting some requests for your email again.
Yeah, I'll type it in. Go ahead.
All right. So, Chip, same thing for you. What's a good way for somebody to reach you if they don't see the job that they want to see, or if they want some more advice about what's going on at Scripps, and a Twitter handle, obviously?
Yeah. So if you're looking at this screen on Zoom right now and you can see my name, just like Al, I think we have about the only names, we're the only people with our names out there on the internet, so we're hard to miss. If you just Twitter at Chip Mahaney, my email address is very simple, chip@scripps.com. I had to pay people big dollars to get the one name email handle, but you know the right people, things get done. Instagram, Chip Mahaney, LinkedIn, Chip Mahaney, Facebook, Chip Mahaney. I'm everywhere the same. So, I'll always be happy to answer a question, provide feedback when I can. Sometimes if I'm on the road, and that's not happening right now, but if I'm on the road, it might take me a couple of days to get back to you. Right now, I've got a lot more kind of accessible time that I can generally be responsive within a day. But feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to offer advice. It's the job I get to do right now, specifically for people coming into the business for the first time. But just like Al and the guys here, we've been doing this for all of our careers. I'm always willing to make a connection, make a friend, see if I can be of help somewhere.
Absolutely. Mr. James Hill.
Yep. At JG Hill Freep is my Twitter handle. So you can reach me there. Yeah, you can reach me through my work email, which I'll get to next week since I'm on furlough this week and I can't. But next week, that's JG, like goody, Hill at freepress.com is my work email. And again, if you're looking at applying for jobs, go to Gannett, GANNETT.com/careers, and every job opening throughout our 250 plus newsrooms here will be listed there, and you can formally apply there. That's always a good place to start because it gets you into the system so that when someone does call and say, hey, I'm interested in you for this position, then it's just a matter of bam, you go through there because your name and everything is already in the system. So I encourage people to go through there, take a look. You can filter by market, state, job type, etc., and see if there's something that you're interested in. And if you are, please do apply because that gets the whole process started. And the biggest thing is getting people in the system.
Thank you. And I'm going to make a shameless plug for nabjcareers.org because people are still reaching out to us and giving us jobs that are available. So we're putting those in every day. So if you go to nabjcareers.org, you can find everything there. Again, I'm Marlon Walker. I'm NABJ's Vice President of Print. You can find me on all social media at Marlon A. Walker, MarlonAwalker, everywhere. And Marlon.Walker at ajc.com. And I know I've seen a lot of things about mentorship. I run up the mentorship for the NABJ Print Task Force and the Freelancers Task Force. So Marlon 4 NABJ at gmail.com. Guys, thank you so much again.
Hey,
thank you
no
for
problem.
inviting us.
Thank you. I think it's
opportunity
important to be able to share these resources and actually be able to kind of commiserate with each other even a little bit during these times.
Absolutely. And people are still hiring. That's always great to see.
That's right. There's
Marlon, I don't know how you find
job
time
out
to
there
do all
for
this.
you.
Marlon, I don't know how you find time to do all this while you're also doing your journalism, but thanks for your work.
It's fun. I'm going right back into a story that's getting edited for next week. So.
Right. Deadlines.
Right.
That's right. Never stops.
All right. You guys take care.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks
Thank you,
everybody
everybody.
for joining. Appreciate your time and your questions.